Yes, I will do the remote access announcement, even though I know that Councillor Gibbs has heard this a number of times before. But just to say, if you can remain muted and then only come off mute when you're invited to speak, if you want to ask a question or raise any issue, if you just indicate by raising your virtual hand on the screen, and then the Mayor will come to you and offer you the opportunity to speak. If you have to leave the meeting for any reason, if you can let us know, either again by raising your hand or by putting something in the chat, because as you know, you aren't allowed to vote on anything unless you've heard the whole of the debate. When it comes to questions, we'll keep an eye out for you and try and call you in order. And when it comes to recommendations, I will have to call you singly to vote and ask you to tell me what it is that you are going to register as your vote. So having said all of that, Mr. Mayor, I'll hand over to you to start the meeting formally.
Okay, thank you, Caris. Fernando Archraiso, good afternoon. Welcome to the Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Full Council meeting on today, Wednesday, the 12th of July, 2023. November 2023. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the authority. Item number 1, apologies for absence. Okay, no, who's here? Thank you. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal prejudicial interests in respect to the matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of the Local Government and Finance Act 1992 relating to council tax, Local Government Act 2000, the council's constitution and the members' code of conduct. Are there any declarations?
Mr. Mayor, before you go to declarations of interest from the floor, I need to just point out that I have had a number of inquiries from members over the course of the last week or so about item 5 with regard to trade union facilities time. What I have said is that if a significant majority of members all share the same interest, then there is no reason for them to be precluded from voting, because that is a general interest. I think probably, aside from any specific issues that I know some members have to raise, perhaps the way to deal with that would be if everybody who is a member of a union, or when they last worked were a member of a union, just simply raise their physical hand right now, so we get a general flavour of how many people that would involve. That will then mean that most people wouldn't need to declare an interest. So can you just raise your hands?
I think okay.
Yeah, thank you. I see that as a significant majority, and therefore it's a shared interest. And if your interest is simply that you are or were a member of a union, then you would not need to declare an interest. Mr. Mayor, I'll hand back to you then for people who are specifically seeking to declare.
Councillor Dave Jones, did you have a query on that?
Yeah, how far back are we looking? Although how far back we look, I was a member of the NUM. That's a long time ago.
I don't think that would count, but I think we have a significant majority so that it's not going to make a difference. I have to get to a point where I'm satisfied that there are enough people that the interest is a general interest, and therefore it's not going to count as a prejudicial interest. So I've got to that stage without having to go back to people going right back into the history.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lisa Minton. Oh, sorry, Councillor Isaacs.
When I well, I'm still with the union, but I was basically the old-fashioned term for it was shop steward. Would that affect that at all?
Okay, Councillor, yeah, Councillor Merton, you was indicating, but your hand's gone down.
I think somebody put my mic off, Mr. Mayor.
Oh.
So I still need to declare, if that's okay. I'd like to declare a personal and prejudicial interest in items 3, 10 and 11. And that is because I sit on the Cyfarthfa Foundation, but I sit as a representative of this council, and therefore I have dispensation to talk and vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michelle Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Going back to Caris's point with the trade unions, I do have a personal and prejudicial interest in that item of the trades union facility time. I am a paying member of one of the unions being discussed and voted this evening. Therefore, I will be withdrawing from this section of the council meeting this evening.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm item 12, the BCA school. I'm governor there, but I've got a discretion because I'm a local councillor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jamie Scriven.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's more of a point of order. And just in terms of the question being asked, as a membership of a trade union is a private matter and it's something that not even employees can regard in terms of their colleagues or anyone that works for them. So I'm just wondering, in terms of the question about why we're asking our members of trade unions, in respect, if they're representatives, that's different, and obviously they hold a significant post in a union, but just being a standard paying member, I don't see how that is a conflict of interest, as that's a right of any employee and it's a private confidential matter.
It's not a conflict of interest of any sort. What I needed to establish was whether there was a majority of the chamber who held the same interest. And on that basis, I would say they didn't need to declare an interest. I've not done it in any way for it to be formally recorded. It was simply to establish if we had that majority in the chamber. What I had over the course of the last few weeks was a number of members who thought they would need to declare an interest simply because they were members of a union. And I needed to get to a point where we could say that that wasn't necessary because it was a shared interest.
Okay, I get the point you're going towards. I just think it was a very strange approach because I would have noted that normally members would declare their own interest. It just seemed a bit odd to ask for members on trade union membership. I get where you're coming from. I just, in my personal view, that is a private, is even under GDPR, it's a private matter. I don't think it was relevant for members to have to disclose that at the meeting. I don't think it has any effect on what we're about to talk about.
What it had an effect on was whether we were going to spend the first half an hour going through every single person declaring an interest. It's absolutely a private matter, I agree. However, just by having a quick show of hands, I had hoped we were going to be able to deal with it more quickly. It may be that we're not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry.
No, we're not, Gareth. It's on that point of numbers declaring. To be quorate for this meeting, we only need 25% of members in the chamber, as you know. So I don't see how that equates. You know, if we're saying there's a personal and prejudicial interest because of the fact that they're paying into a union who receives, and that party receives millions of pounds from that union, there's a conflict in my mind. But the fact that even if everybody in the union left, we'd still have enough people here to do business.
It's about whether it amounts to a conflict of interest. If it's a shared interest of a significant majority, then it isn't a conflict. Well, it's not that it isn't a conflict, it's not a prejudicial interest. And that's why I wanted to establish that we had a significant majority.
But wouldn't the prejudicial interest be in the fact that members will be voting on money from this authority being allocated to a union who are affiliated to the organisation that they are part of?
That's a different question altogether. That's about democracy and politics. Whether somebody has a prejudicial interest is about their personal interest in the matter being discussed. I think what you're trying to say is that by being part of a political party which supports a union, that of itself gives them an interest, and it doesn't.
It was more the financial aspect of it that I would question, in terms of the money that is being supported by the union to the party. It was the financial aspect that I couldn't quite get my head around, to be honest.
That's because that's part of a political party decision. That's democracy. You're allowed to be part of a political party. The political party makes decisions to do particular things and makes a particular stance. Political parties do that. That's what they're there for. And so being part of that, whether it means that you contribute financially or not, is not something that would give you a prejudicial interest.
Right. So in terms of the connections between the union and the party, there's no prejudicial interest. There's a personal interest, obviously.
Yeah, each individual person could have a personal interest. The political party doesn't, being part of a political party does not give them a prejudicial interest.
Okay, that's what Barry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Items 3, 10 and 11 as Councillor Mitten.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done with that. Yeah.
I think so, unless anybody else.
Item 3, presentation on the Cavarth Foundation. We've actually moved the agenda around, and that item will now be taken before we vote on the exempt item. So that we'll move on to item number 4, which is minutes from previous meetings. That's items 4A to 4I, to approve the meetings, excuse me, my tongue twisted, to approve as accurate the minutes of the meetings. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Can I move the minutes, Mr. Mayor?
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, can we take that to a vote then, please? Okay, thank you. So we move on to agenda item number 5, Trades Union Facility Time Agreement. To consider the report to the Chief Executive. We'll just wait for Councillor Simmons to leave the meeting. Okay, thank you. So Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Excuse me, can I come in here before you go to Councillor Barry, please? Do I get an option to vote on the minutes?
I am so sorry, Councillor Gibbs. Would you have voted for, against, or abstained? I will.
Guys.
Thank you. I will make sure that I come to you next time.
Okay, that will be recorded.
Thank
Councillor Gibbs, sorry about that. Councillor Andrew Barry.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So trade union facility time agreement. So the report is being brought to full council to request an increase in growth for 2 days of facility time for both Unison and GMB unions. A clarified position from the outset, we're fully supportive of the work of the trade unions and will continue to work in partnership with them. And we're more than happy to support full-time facility time where business levels require that support, as long as the unions pay for that full support through subscriptions taken from their members in the council. I'll set out the argument for 2 days. Back in 2018, this full council approved the release of the full-time Unison trade union facilities time unanimously. The rationale being the continuing difficult financial position this and every other authority in Wales has experienced in the past few years. In February 2023, due to financial constraints and to support voluntary redundancy and voluntary early retirement process, a temporary 5 days facility time for both Unison and GMB unions for a fixed term 6-month period was agreed by full council. And as the report clarifies at 3.3, it was to support us through the voluntary redundancy and voluntary early retirement process. We've already extended that by 1 month, taking facilities time to 7 months, not for the 6 months as originally agreed, with the authority paying the extra facilities time out of the HR budget. Whilst compiling this report, we continue to ask for evidence for the work over the 7-month period that the authority had paid for. Over that 7-month period, unions assisted with 6 VER issues. Other work included sickness, performance and probation, disciplinary and grievance, other issues, and 1 job evaluation appeal, or what might be described as standard union representation. As I mentioned earlier, we as an administration fully support the work of the trade unions, but it is not that principle that the recommendation is based upon. Union members in this authority, as far as we can establish, are, and I'm happy to stand corrected, GMB members 260, Unison 375 members, paying between £15 and £20 per month, dependent on what type of representation those members choose to take. Combined income at £15 per month would equate to £114,300 per annum, and combined income at £20 a month would be £152,400 per annum. And again, I'm happy to stand corrected. An additional 5 days would cost an additional £43,292 between the two representatives. 1% on our council tax is £259,000 and applies pressure to increase to cover that amount. These proposed 2 days will cost an additional £16,630 and will apply the same pressure on council tax increases to burden our residents, whilst at the same time residents will know union receipts as they are. This administration are responsible for public funds, and at a time of economic and financial turmoil throughout the public sector in Wales and the UK. Our support for the unions is resolute. This is why our recommendation is based on compromise between that resolution and ensuring any additional funding from this authority is distributed on a fair, equitable and economically justifiable basis. Our decision is based on the facts, and at that point I will take the recommendation. The recommendation of 2.1 is the growth required for 2 days trade union facilities time for both Unison and GMB until the 31st of March 2024 be approved. I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
I second the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions, please? Councillor Darren Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an extremely short-sighted proposal that ignores the reality of the council's budget position and the need for stronger partnership working with our recognised trade unions. It also goes against officers' recommendations to keep the facility time at 5 days a week. I have heard a suggestion that because there may not be any redundancies to meet this year within the budget, that the trade unions do not need the same facility time. This is an ill-judged political decision and quite frankly shocking. This is the very time where we need to be talking to the trade unions in even more depth about the changes and transformation in services if we are to get anywhere near the budget demands we face. We need to strengthen the social partnership with our trade unions, not weaken them. Social partnership should be the central to the way in which we talk about the demands this council face. ACAS, the conciliation service, in their code of practice at point 3 states, there are positive benefits for employers, employees and for trade union members in encouraging the efficient...
Sorry, Councillor Roberts, is there a question coming? Please?
Yes, if you bear with me, Mr. Mayor. There are positive benefits for employers, employees and trade and union members in encouraging the efficient performance of union representatives at work. And surely that is the point for us as councillors. The evidence shows that the county borough as an employer can benefit from positive working relationship with trade unions. Why jeopardise this? And yet here we are facing the opposite scenario as we debate a proposal to cut the facility time agreement. As a Labour group, we believe that the council need more trade union involvement in the review and redesign of services. The unions need to be around the table if we are to make a significant inroad into the scale of savings that the budget forecast suggests. It may have escaped the notice of the independents that working in partnership with trade unions means more than having them around 2 days a week. It may have escaped their notice that matters of grievance and discipline are not confined to 2 days a week. It may have also escaped their notice that negotiating our way through current difficulties are not confined to 2 days a week. So on these benches, we are urging that trade union facility time is not cut, as we need the support of the trade unions, their members and the local authority staff to meet the challenges that we face in years ahead. Therefore, Mr. Mayor, I would like to make an amendment, and this is where the question comes. So can I make that amendment? And that amendment is that Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council continue with 5 days trades union facility time for both Unison and GMB until the 31st of March 2024, and then a further report to be brought back to full council to discuss the facility time for 2024-2025 and future years. I move, and Mr Mayor, can I ask for a recorded vote as well, please? Thank you.
Okay, is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Clive Jones.
Can I second that, Mr Mayor?
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to questions on the amendment.
Can I just check first of all, Democratic Services, have you got a note of the amendment in full?
We need
Thank
to take a vote on the recorded vote. With the show of hands.
I think before we get to that, if you can deal with questions on the amendment, and then we'll get to a vote for whether we have a recorded vote.
Okay, so we'll take questions on the amendment, and first it's Councillor Declan Salmon, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Given the union 5 days a week facility time was to support us through the voluntary redundancy and voluntary early retirement process, I've only got one question tonight for the Chief Executive, because it does say that this is a report considered a report of the Chief Executive. Can you guarantee that a future report will not come to full council to ask for increased trades union time within the next few months when elected members are considering the budget process in respect of redundancies, voluntary redundancies, or voluntary early retirement?
Well, I think that is depending on what happens this evening. But obviously, if you want me to give a guarantee in terms of what could happen next, I don't think I can, Councillor Sam.
What I'm asking is that, do you foresee that we'll be looking at voluntary early retirements, voluntary redundancy, or redundancies, as part of the budget setting process?
Yeah. I think given the uncertain position we're currently facing, obviously we're not going to get our settlement position until late on in the year, December the 20th is what we've been told. We simply don't know at this stage how difficult the budget setting is going to become. But obviously a consideration could be for council to consider those type of interventions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Hughes.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I ask, is it right that the council pays Merthyr pay for union facility time when there's already the subs will cover that cost of that price? I'm happy to support 5 days a week as long as the union pays for it.
It's phrased as a question. As I understand it, the question is, are the union going to self-fund 5 days? I'm not sure who in this chamber could answer that, because
Darren is the one that made the amendment.
what
For you, Mr Mayor, I'll quite happily come back in that. It was officers' recommendations to extend it to the 31st of March anyway. So the funding should be in place for that. Obviously, the further report that comes back to council can debate moving forward. So as far as I'm concerned, it's there, wherever it comes from.
Yeah, Councillor Hughes.
Darren, do you think it's fair that the council pays Merthyr pay for facility time? That was the question I asked.
It's where you draw the line, Councillor Hughes. I quite frankly believe that we should have the unions behind the staff of this local authority to make sure that they are represented. Whether you disagree with that is a matter for you, but I firmly support it. Thank you.
I've already stated I'm happy to have the unions here as long as the unions pay for it. But what I would say is that we all voted to leave the unions go at one time, so I can't see what the reason to bring them back now.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Julia Jenkins, please.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's just a clarification. When Caris asked, I thought you'd asked, was I a union member now, which I'm not. But up until a couple of months ago, I've always been a union member since the age of 16. Like I said, I'm in full support of union. I was a union official myself in a strong trade union. But what I'd like to ask, can I ask Clive or Darren, if they can answer me. Based on information we've already heard tonight, where union members in Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council collectively pay between £114,000 and £152,000 per year towards Unison and GMB trade unions. What other service would the union members be willing to pay twice for? And on the back of that, then there's wants and needs. When we come to the budget board and we've got to sort out priorities, where the money goes going forward, we need frontline service workers, we need domiciliary care workers. They are all priority than a full-time union rep. Thank you.
Okay, is there a question in there? Anyone?
I think there was. I'm not quite sure. Yes.
Services would they be paid twice for?
Right.
Or who can answer that?
It's my understanding, Mr. Mayor, that when when we pay to the trade unions, that goes into the trade union pot. Obviously, there's far more from that payment than just time within the local authority. What I will refer to, though, is Councillor Salmon's point, and he is, right to raise it. We don't know what's coming down the road, and the chief executive just confirmed that. So we being asked to make a decision tonight to cut facility time to 2 days, and we don't know whether 2 days facility time is going to be enough to deal with the demands moving forward. So when we come to the next budget setting process, let's have that debate then. But for now, I think we should stick with the 5 days.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brent Carter, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. The first question is, do most authorities currently pay for this anyway? Is the first question. 5 days. I'm not sure if anybody can answer that, but I believe that most of them do. And the second question, and this is for the record, can you confirm this is a cabinet decision, not an officer's decision?
But we're asking questions on the amendment. That's not a question on the amendment.
Oh, apologies. I just thought I'd put it out there.
Thank you. Councillor Lisa Minton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So mine is in relation to the amendment that my colleagues put forward. So, and it's similar to Councillor Carter's question as well. So I think, and apologies, I'm not the best mathematic brain in this council chamber tonight, but I think we're looking at circa £25,000 difference then, yeah, from the 2 to the 5 days. So are we aware, because it's been bandied around about the unions out of the membership that they have supporting that difference to bring it up to 5 days then. So if we as a council were to say, yeah, we'll give the 16,630, out of the 21 other local authorities, is there a local authority where a union does, they do meet it halfway or a third of the way out? That's my first question. Do we know that?
It's not my understanding that other local authorities sort of meet halfway. So it's the understanding that they do pay facilities time, and obviously depending on the size of the organisation, that depends how much.
Okay, thank you. And then I've got a second question then as well. So Darren said about bringing the report back, to review at the end of March regarding the facilities time because of the unprecedented time that we will inevitably face or consider that we are facing over the next couple of months. So with regards to that, in order, and I'm not disputing facility time, and you're quite right. I think, apologies if it was Darren, I'm not sure if it was, but somebody said about, it's not just about dealing with voluntary early retirement and things like that. It's about dealing with grievance support and things like that as well. So do our union officers then, are they able to provide evidence of just how much work is involved? Do you see what I mean? So for instance, then we could see just how much time that is taken out of that let me rephrase that they couldn't possibly fit it in within 2 days. Then as Darren is alluding to, it would have to be 5 days in order to support with all those different things that they do.
Obviously, myself and the team work really closely with the trade unions, but I don't directly line manage the trade unions. But what I do know is obviously the work from HR and how much support they give me and the staff, not only on the formal side of disciplinaries and grievances, but the work they do to prevent that coming through to HR, so the informal conversations.
Okay.
So I have got obviously HR information about how many disciplinaries and grievances, how many sickness meetings, etc., that do require union representation. So that does give us an indication of the fact that, you know, that there is not just us going through the budget setting period where we do need extra support for redundancies and early retirements, but the ongoing work where we need to work collaboratively together to support our staff and our workforce.
Okay, well then forgive me, because inevitably, as being leader prior, you know, previously, we would have meetings with unions, so I would be aware of, you know, a lot of the time that was given for them. But I think that would have been useful within the body of this report, you know, because the way that you're describing it with regards to the HR relationship as well is that the feeling that I'm getting is you feel it's more than 2 days as well. I'm not putting words into your mouth, but, you know, just with regards to the description you just made. And I think that would have been useful within the body of this report, just so we could see just how much time is being given. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David Hughes.
Thank you. Question, Anna. How many HR representatives have we got in the council? Not full time? Union rep, sorry.
Union.
Yeah.
I haven't got that information in front of me. I think I did share that information with you a couple of months ago when we looked at the facility time at the start of the year. But I can get that for you.
No, but my question is, I think it's 10, I think you come back to me last time. With 10, so we got 10 we got 10 union reps who were representing the people throughout the organization. I can't ever remember any of them ever being not having time off to represent the members. So I can't see why more than two days are needed personally, but I stand corrected if that's what you feel.
Yeah, Councillor Andrew Barry.
Yeah, two issues, Mr. Mayor. The one to support what Hannah was saying, in answer to the previous question, was this report specifically says in 3.3 is to help us through voluntary redundancy and voluntary retirement process. That's what this report specifically refers to, not other union issues. That is just general representation by the unions. That's what this report refers to. And I said within my presentation, within that 7-month period, 6 VER issues were dealt with. The other stuff is immaterial because we're not talking about that. We're talking about those issues, and we were talking about 6. Now, I was as frustrated in terms of getting the information on union workload as much as everybody else here. And I had to look for this. I had to go and speak to Hannah, go through. We spoke to Kevin and the GMB. We looked for that information. Very sparse information coming back. That's the only information I've got, and it relates to 3.3 of this report.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Barry, have you got a question?
I'm just supporting. It's not a question. I'm supporting
Well,
what Hannah said
we're on
as
questions
as
at the
cabinet
moment.
member. I'm making a point. So, what I also want to suggest is, in terms of the recommendation, I'm making a it's about the recommendation to cut this short. Thank you very much. If I change the recommendation to say that the shortfall for the 5 days, if that was picked up by the union, then we could recommend the 5 days. Would that be something that's acceptable, or would that need to be negotiated with the union and come back to this?
If you're going to propose that, that's another amendment. I'm not sure how you could propose that now, because we don't have the views of the union, who are not members of this council and therefore not able to answer that question as to whether that's something they could or would be willing to do. It's not something that we can deal with now, because you're proposing something that we don't know whether it's feasible to do or not.
Okay, Councillor.
No.
Because of the lack of information I think we've got before us this evening, and we need to be clear going forward in the future, is it worth deferring this report, right, until March, until the full budget process, right? But in the meantime, we pick up the tab until that point when the budget process going in. So there will be the full union representation for the 5 days until the end of the year.
I think, Councillor Thomas, that is actually what the wording of the amendment requires, because I think it says until March. So there would be a 5-day-a-week facility time for the two unions until March. So effectively, that's what the amendment says.
Okay, Councillor David Jones, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hannah, since the facility, it's very recent that the facility time has stopped. Have there been any difficulties dealing with issues as quickly as you would have liked?
Yes, there has.
Could you expand on that a bit more, please?
Since the 16th of October, the Unison full-time official went back to his substantive post. Sorry, I can't see you over there. Which is, and obviously the GMB Unison rep has reduced down to 2 days. That has resulted in some of our planned meetings not having a Unison rep available. And that has resulted in us not being able to conclude some investigation meetings. And obviously they're on hold at the moment until Unison are able to provide us with representation.
So do you have any timescale for that? How long it's going to take? And how quickly could it be resolved if there was 5-day facility time?
Well, I believe that obviously Unison wanted to understand the outcome of tonight's council report before we can obviously try and negotiate who is going to be the Unison rep moving forward, whether that's 2 days or 5 days. So once we can do that, then obviously we need to reinstigate those meetings.
And you could get back on track quickly if that's what happens.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Councillor Clive Jones. Point of order, Councillor Barron.
This report is not about general facility time for union work. This is about supporting VR, VER. That's what this report talks about in 3.3. So that is a spurious question.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Andrew Barry, in one of his statements, said, and he gave the figures of the membership of the GMB is 260 and 330 to Unison. Can I ask Hannah, I suspect I know where Councillor Barry had those figures from, and they would be direct from payroll. But that's not the true figure of trade union members in this authority, is it?
I don't believe he would have got those figures from payroll. We don't actually know how many members because it doesn't go through the payroll system. So members pay directly to GMB or Unison. So as an authority, we don't have the exact figures.
So we can only assume then, Mr. Mayor, that Councillor Barry had these figures out of the air.
I'm not sure.
Because a member can be a member of a union with the authority not knowing. And that is the case because they can pay a standing order through the bank. So unless you got that figure, you wouldn't know what the true membership is.
Okay, Councillor David Jones.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I pressed a button. But
Okay. Councillor Andrew Barry then.
Just to come back on that, I did have it from payroll. That's where it came from. These are the direct payments, but as Clive rightly says, as Councillor Jones rightly says, there are greater numbers which we couldn't get, despite asking the unions for those numbers. We couldn't get those numbers. We were told 770. I've taken the minimum figures as an indication of how much the unions are making. What Councillor Jones is referring to is practically, well, so it's an awful lot more money coming into the unions, which strengthens the case. But if that money is coming into the unions, then they can afford to pay rather than the taxpayers of this town.
So no more questions on the amendment. So was that, oh, sorry, Councillor Minton, was that a question on the amendment? That's a comment. So we move on to comments. So Councillor Lisa Minton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. And I've listened to everybody in their comments tonight. I still go back to the question that I asked. I just think there's a little bit of grey area within the body of this report, and supporting my cabinet member in that as well. I don't think it's clear, and I think inevitably that we need to reconsider this report and the 2 days going forward, and reconsider the 5 days facilities, and that's what I would support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Minton. Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The recommendations to reduce the 5 days trade union facility time is, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a retrograde step, and will only harm industrial relations between all the staff on this council. Since the facility time was stopped on the 1st of October, it's already had its adverse effect, with the seconded officers only having 15 hours a week to deal with very important tasks, and with delays in meetings with the council, HR officers and the trade union members they represent will worsen as time goes on. In fact, the former Unison seconded officer has gone back to work full-time since the 1st of October, because it is not possible for him to do the job he was doing and spend 15 hours on the facility time. Disciplinary hearings and grievances have already been delayed, as well as the general negotiations between the trade unions and officers of the council. Facility time has always been of mutual benefit to this council and the employees represented by the trade unions. Seconded full-time trade union facilities has always meant that many problems from escalation into industrial disputes, grievances, and disciplinaries have been avoided because of there would be no need for the formal stages. Can I refer, Mr. Mayor, to the Social Partnership and Public Procurement Wales Act 2023, which received the royal assent on the 24th of May this year, placing social partnership on a statutory footing in Wales. The Social Partnership Council for Wales comprises employers and workers from the public, private and third sector, and their first meeting is scheduled in January 24. I quote from the Act: "Public bodies covered by the legislation will need to seek compromise with recognised trade unions or staff when developing their well-being objectives." So, how are the well-being objectives going to be observed in Merthyr Tydfil? Mr. Mayor, I suggest to you that they are not with a reduction of 5 days to 2 days. They have just fallen off a cliff. The unions, if the recommendations are approved tonight, will have only one option open to them, and that is to register a dispute that will not be in the interest of Merthyr Tydfil Council or its employers. And just to add, with the questions that have been posed by at least 3 independent councillors, let me tell them they have no idea whatsoever what is involved in trade union representation. I was a trade union branch secretary many years ago, Mr. Mayor, and I still have the scars on my back. And I can tell you now, it is impossible, especially in this day and age, when industrial relations have become more complicated, to be doing and looking after several hundred members and trying to do your job at the same time. So they have no idea absolutely what's involved. And I say again, if this goes through to 2 days, and probably, I would suggest, the only local authority in Wales, industrial relations, it'll do inevitable harm.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Julia Jenkins, please.
Yeah, it's a comment. Just to reiterate what Clive just said, I also was a union official, and I do know what's involved. I was in the NGA, the National Graphical Association, which was a very, very strong union, where they didn't want women involved in the union. So I do know what it's like to have the backlashes and everything. And what I will say, if we have in Merthyr Council 10 officials already, as an official myself or a union member that is able to go to a meeting, they should be au fait with the basics to be able to work with HR and stand by a member to resolve issues before it goes to a national or a next level up. In all the years I've worked for unions, and I think a union is a good thing to have. But when there's other priorities, and when we come to do the budget board, I cannot support a full-time union rep over domiciliary care, frontline workers. I'm sorry, when it comes to it, it's, like I said previously, it's a want, it's not a need. Not in the first instance. We don't even know if we've got redundancies coming. And that's what this report is for, to help with redundancies. It's regardless of everything else. If your union officials aren't au fait with their knowledge that Unison and the GMB union, it's not a Merthyr Council issue or a priority. It's the completely on the union's back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, we were never going to, win the vote tonight with Councillor Simmons declaring a personal prejudicial interest. But what is important, I think, is that the people of Merthyr Tydfil can now see that through their council tax, they pay in for unions representation at the local authority. And I think that needed to be shown this evening. Later on this year or early next year, when we set the budget process for 24-25, we'll be discussing this again, union representation, facility time. But I know during that period, we'll be looking for a lot more information, a real deep dive into this. So I'd like Hannah to keep proper records of what goes on from year on in, so we can fully scrutinise exactly, what is needed.
Thank you. Councillor James Griffin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to make a quick point of clarity, to remind Councillor Thomas there's an independent member here as well, so it's not necessarily on the grounds of the fact that you would have lost the vote tonight. Just to remind everyone. But I guess what I'd like to say is, as specifically in the role as the mental health champion of the council, I feel like I bear a responsibility that extends not just to the delivery of our services to the residents, as Councillor Julie Jenkins mentioned, but also to the heart of the team, the staff who are working here tirelessly to strive and deliver those key services. Now, empowering and amplifying the voices of our workers through robust union representation is crucial. Reducing the proposed 5-day facility time not only makes matters more challenging, as Hannah's already said, with HR, there's already been issues that have been in place. There's been moments where you've had meetings that have been placed without representation, and that's just not acceptable. It leaves hundreds of members of staff at risk of not having that full representation that they need and the support. And we do need to also acknowledge the fact that this isn't just free time off, it's a preventative measure, it's a lifeline for us as a council as well, having those reps in place. And it often removes that costly dispute and preserves the bedrock of our service standards. A reduction in uncertain times is also difficult, and like Els has already pointed out, we can't be sure of what's coming down the road. and it will undermine the union's strength in negotiating on behalf of workers with the reduction. It opens the door for less favourable outcomes for our staff who are in employment, and that's something that I can't support. As I feel that when an employee feels unsupported, they've got to have unhindered access to those who will fight for them. It can't be we'll have it next week or in 2 weeks' time, or we'll have it when they're available because they're currently working in their normal role. That's just not acceptable. And there will be occasions where people will say, right, well, you can ring the branch. That doesn't necessarily mean that the branch are available at that appropriate time as well. And I think we've got a responsibility as an employer to ensure that that support and structure is in place here from us as a council, and that our members have got that unhindered access. It's our duty to shield the workers from any exploitation and guarantee them fair treatment in every circumstance. So curtailing the facility time is putting that risk there of stripping away that shield that our staff rely on. And in addition to that, we're in a time of upheaval. We've also got to be guardians of people's rights for that reason. We've got to stand shoulder to shoulder with our staff, united front of them, offer the facility time that they need. It's not only about fortifying their powers, but it's doing what's right for them. It's making sure their rights are in place. So I would disagree with Councillor Jenkins. It's not a want, it is a need. It is a right that we should be supporting our workers. If we don't have the staff on board feeling supported, then we can't deliver on the services that you're saying that this money needs to go to, as we simply will not have people feeling safe and secure in their jobs. Ultimately, I'm quite concerned that the Cabinet are putting it down to financial constraint. I was hoping, if the amendment doesn't go forward, to ask some questions around some of the more reasoning behind the decision for 2 days, because I, from reading the report, can't work it out. It's very bare minimum within there. But to put it down to financial constraint just doesn't work for me. The weight of our financial situation as an authority should never disproportionately affect our workers or hinder their ability to stand up for their rights. So for that reason, I am more than happy to support the amendment that the Labour Group have moved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Anna Williams-Price, please.
Thank you. This report makes clear that the benefit of trade union facility time is recognised by the officers, and Hannah has asserted that this evening. I note comments on financial pressures and also note that the same Cabinet members did not have similar concerns when voting to take £20,000 from reserves for additional hours within the comms team this September. I was pleased to stand in solidarity with GMB and Unison prior to this meeting and hear firsthand about the work they do supporting employees across the local authority. This is more important than ever in difficult financial times. I've raised in this chamber before that the role of local government staff is too often undervalued, and I am glad that members within this chamber have been able to reflect on the impact that this proposal will have on staff and the organisation more generally, and recognise that as we move towards what will no doubt be another difficult budget setting period, we need to take the opportunity to assess the future roles of unions, and my hope and expectation is a proper cost-benefit analysis will demonstrate that the role of the unions should be strengthened and not weakened.
Thank you. Councillor David Hughes.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear Clive saying how the marks in his back, but I didn't hear him saying that when he voted to get rid of the facility time, or he didn't make that plea to keep him when we were voting to get rid of the facility time in 2018. And it beggars belief. Since 2018, we haven't had the full-time union facility until 6 months ago. There wasn't any problem in the council, as far as I can see, for them 3 years. So I don't know why now, over the last 6 months, that we've had all this problem where HR needs to work more closer, because there weren't anybody to work close to over the 3 years. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Councillor Declan Salmon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to a comment was made that we would lose the vote anyway, and then subsequently Councillor Jamie Scriven mentioning independent. Just like to say that we're an independent group. We're not whipped, and it doesn't mean that any members will vote definitely for or something. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Layton, you disappeared off my screen. Did you want to make a comment? Oh, okay. Okay, Councillor Layton,
Yes,
please.
I just had a comment. Very similar to Councillor Scrivens and Councillor Salmons. Sorry, Leader, but I didn't come here tonight with a decision. I came here to listen and to hear all the comments, everybody's, questions. So I just wanted to make that clear as part of the independent group. Does not mean I haven't got an independent view. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, you'll close the debate if you speak, and Councillor David Jones still wants to speak. So.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just quite brief. I think it's a bit rich for the Cabinet Member for Finance and others to call this a council tax increase when his group voted against the council tax reduction last year proposed by the Labour group and still ended the year with a surplus of circa £1.5 million. I'd be corrected on the figure. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak before Councillor Roberts closes the debate? Councillor Barry's already spoken.
Yeah.
Unless it's a matter of personal clarification. Oh, no, he hasn't already spoken in conclusion. No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, okay, Councillor Barry. Then.
The picture's being painted as we're anti-union here. We certainly are not. We're just responsible for the finances of this authority. The amounts that I described in the preamble to the report, the recommendations, were obviously way off the mark, as Councillor Jones indicated, because there are many more union members than I've indicated. £43,000 will be out of the pockets of the people of this town and to the benefit of the union. I am of a mind that if the unions are taking that sort of money in subscriptions to be supportive and represent the members that they purport to represent, then they should step up and put some money into it. That's where I stand on it. It is not supporting the unions. The unions have got a very vital role to play. But the finances of it, let the union off here. Now, I'm disappointed with the report in terms of its information. The length of debate indicates the report wasn't up to it. Now, if we debate this again, we will need more information from all angles and input from the unions to see where they stand on it. We had meetings arranged with unions and only GMB turned up, so we couldn't ask those questions and get more information. So next time this comes round, we suggest the unions get round the tables with us, and we suggest, and I suggest, that the reports need to be more substantive with all views in it, so we don't have protracted debates such as we've had tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Jenkins, you've already made a comment on this, so you can't make a further comment, I'm afraid. Councillor Carter has yet to comment though. So.
Yeah, just quickly, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I'm going to say something. It saddens me actually to hear Councillor Barry come in with these comments that he's now blaming the officers for not enough information on this report when he sees officers throughout this authority which we want to protect. So I'm quite saddened to hear that, Councillor Barry. It really saddens me. And also, I do believe it's your report, so I would have thought you'd have read it thoroughly before coming to council tonight.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to Councillor Darren Roberts, and this will close the debate now. So this is the last comment on this. Thank you.
Mayor, coming back to Councillor Barry's point about the finances being the benefit of the union. It's not the benefit of the union, it's actually for the benefit of the staff of this local authority to safeguard their working rights and the way that they are protected. And I'll just refer back to a paragraph from my initial statement, which seems like a lifetime ago now. This is the very time where we need to be talking to the trade unions in even more depth about the changes and transformation in services that if we are to get anywhere near the budget demands we face. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Mr. Mayor, it's been there has been a recorded vote called for. So I need 5 members to support that if we are to proceed with recorded votes. So I think we could just do that by show of hands. I can see Councillor Gibbs has already done that. So that's clear that we are going to proceed by way of recorded vote. So I will read out everybody's name and then ask you whether you wish to vote for the amendment, against the amendment, or to abstain. Are we all? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. So, Councillor Andrew Barry, are you for the amendment, against the amendment, or abstaining?
Hence,
Go.
against, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Councillor Brent Carter, are you for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm Colbrand, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Jeremy Davis, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Lee Davis, for, against, or abstaining?
For.
Councillor Ernie Goldsworthy. Thank you. Councillor Kevin Gibbs, as I remember to come to you this time.
Only because you've got the list in front of you.
I know.
4 carries.
Thank you. Councillor David Hughes.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor David Isaac. Thank you. Councillor Julia Jenkins. Thank you. Councillor Claire Jones. Abstain. Councillor Clive Jones.
For.
Thank you. Councillor David Jones.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Michelle Jones. Thank you. Councillor Paula Layton. Thank you. Councillor Gareth Lewis. Thank you. Councillor Lisa Mitten. Thank you. Councillor Gareth Richards. Thank you. Councillor Darren Roberts. Thank you. Councillor Declan Salmon.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Jamie Scriven. Thank you. Councillor Bill Smith. Thank you. Councillor Michelle Simmons is not here. Councillor Geraint Thomas. Thank you. Councillor Ian Thomas. Thank you. Councillor John Thomas.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Scott Thomas. Thank you. Councillor Clive Tovey. Thank you. Councillor Louise Minute Vokes. Thank you. Councillor Anna Williams Price. Thank you. And that is 21 votes in favour of the amendment, 7 votes against and 1 abstention. And so the amendment is passed and the original recommendation falls away.
Okay, thank you. Could someone fetch Councillor Simmons, please?
As well, because she's proposing this.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And we'll just give Councillor Simmons a minute to get settled in, because the next item, agenda item number 6, supported accommodation provision, investor save opportunity, to consider the report of the Deputy Chief Executive, and it's Councillor Simmons who's addressing this report. So. You just wait 1 second to give people a chance to leave who are leaving. Okay, Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report supported accommodation provision, invest to save opportunity. Report author Suzanne Lewis Abbott, who joins us in the chamber this evening. The summary of the report is laid out in 1.1 to 1.3 and briefly describes the challenges and unprecedented demand for temporary accommodation, specifically the need for supported accommodation to transition those experiencing homelessness from unsuitable B&B accommodation into permanent affordable homes. The report describes the consequences of the current position from a statutory, financial and most importantly, human impact of this in the short and longer term. The report also outlines the opportunity and recommendation to purchase a suitable building at no additional capital cost to the authority for conversion into a supported accommodation. The recommendations, there are two. 2.1, officers progress and invest to save opportunity, whereby we would invest £340,000 per annum on the revenue costs associated with supported accommodation, approximately 15 to 20 units, which will be offset through savings of approximately £500,000 per annum in B&B costs for temporary accommodation to meet our statutory homelessness duties be approved. And 2.2, revenue funding of £340,000 core funding to part fund a new supported accommodation provision be approved. I move, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry.
Happy to second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments then, please? Sorry, questions, beg your pardon, getting ahead of myself. Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just got one. It's on page 46 under paragraph 4, headed current position, paragraph 4.1, and there's a latter part of it. It says legislative reform currently being proposed by Welsh Government includes an amendment to the Suitability of Accommodation Order 2015, and if implemented, will mean that authorities will no longer be able to use bed and breakfast accommodation for temporary accommodation. And it goes on to say Welsh Government anticipates such changes to be implemented by the end of the current Senedd term, which is 2026. Could one of the officers confirm what the date of, in fact, that it will be implemented? Because according to my view, it says by the end of the Senedd term, which is a few years away.
Yeah, so currently there's a white paper out to consultation. So there is no definitive date other than the implication, sort of implying of Welsh Government that the current legislation that was brought in as part of the public health emergency of the no one left out approach and associated suitability relaxation, I suppose, of use of B&B for other things other than emergency sort of fire and flood situations, that this cannot continue. The no one left out approach would likely be brought into legislation as such is now out in a white paper for consultation, and the only information we've been given is their view and want is to bring it in before the end of the current Senedd term. That's all the information we have.
So, in the white paper that is out now, I don't know if there's an end date in that paper because I haven't read it. Is there an end date in that?
It's a consultation document, and there's responses the 16th of January, I believe.
So we may know sometime after the 6th of January if the Welsh Government have got a date in mind, but we don't know what that date is because it could be years' time, 2 years' time. Am I wrong?
There's no definitive date as of yet.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Salmon, you had a question or not?
And I'll ask it. I wanted to clarify if that's okay. It does say, bear with me now 2 seconds. My memory's not the best either. It says that the County Borough Council will be investing 340,000 and be making savings of 500,000. Are the savings 500,000 or are they 160,000? 500 minus 340.
Yeah, so the saving would be £160,000. So the current cost of a similar level of units of B&B and suitable accommodation equates to 500, and the new provision would cost around 340.
Lovely, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor David Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just minor one, really. In the report, I'm used to having very good reports from yourself. It says 15 to 20 units. Why is it such a span of 15 to 20? Not more accurate figure.
So we're currently scoping a number of buildings and potential facilities that could house a number of individuals.
And to do this, we're doing it via the Transitional Accommodation Capital Programme, so TACP monies, of which they stipulate quite heavily room sizes, number of facilities per person. So depending on what facility we have, would enable us to have up to sort of 15 or 20. So it's subject to the building that we're able to find that would be suitable.
Thank you very much. Cheers, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No, any comments then, please? No, no comments. We'll go straight to a vote then.
So yes, you were waiting for me to say to Councillor Gibbs. Councillor Gibbs, are you voting for, against or abstaining?
All carries.
Thank you. Then that is carried, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 7, to deal with any urgent business or correspondence. There is none. Item 8, to receive communications from their worship the Mayor. There is none. But now we're going back to agenda item number 3, which is a presentation on the Cavartha Foundation. So. I'll give this a half an hour.
Well, I told you about 10 minutes to present.
Actually, that's over there. See the I can see what's obviously one thing.
Okay, I'd just like to hand over to the team from the Cavartha Foundation then, please, for the presentation.
Yep, there we are. I take it you can all hear me. I'm very grateful to you for hearing us this evening. Thank you for this opportunity to state our case. My name is Geraint Talman-Davies. I chair the Cavartha Foundation. And with me on the far right is Roland Davis, a fellow board member and an acknowledged expert on property matters. And on my immediate right, Anna Baker, the chief executive of the foundation, and an experienced architect who's recently won a major European award for her last heritage project in Bath. And also with us on my left here is Jeff Hunt, our new vice chair, until recently group commercial director for the global operations of Arup, the international engineering firm. Now, I know that time is limited, so we will endeavour to be brief this evening. But just to say this, it's now some 6 years since the council and a few of volunteers embarked on this process. The council, to its eternal credit, showed its commitment by funding the first brainstorming session back in 2017 on a rainy day in Cavartha Castle, and then the master plan report that was published and accepted by the council unanimously in 2020. And I must say that that showed vision and a lot of commitment. But I have to say that since then, that progress has been somewhat slower, especially on the issue of asset transfer. It's now more than a year since we tabled a possible route map on the asset transfer question, and I'm afraid that we are still really not far at all from the starting line. I won't need to tell anybody in this room, or indeed anybody, in the wider Merthyr public, that time is money. And in the last year, inflation has meant that the funding hill we face on this project is now even steeper. So we do now need to move more quickly. And we cannot do that unless tonight we address the crucial issue of the length of the lease that we are seeking. Before we come to that specific point, I want to ask Anna to remind you of just what we have delivered to date. And after that, Roland can take you through the legal issues and their implications. Anna.
Can you hear me all right? Yeah, great. So as Geraint said, the publication of the Cyfarthfa Plan itself back in January 21, that really kick-started a period of positive progress, and that's been, has been great. So I wanted to just talk through quickly the key achievements that, we've managed to date. In March 2021, straight after that publication, Welsh Government confirmed their commitment of a grant of £1.2 million for the Cyfarthfa Foundation. This was to support our setup and core costs for the initial 3 years. In October 21, the foundation itself was created with charitable status. To the foundation, a really stellar board was recruited, combining top international expertise and community representation, including Geraint and Lisa here tonight. But I know that Geraint will cover the board in a bit more detail later on. I started in September last year. As Geraint said, I'm an architect, a project manager. I come from a National Lottery Heritage funded project in Bath, which has won awards both in the UK and Europe. In October last year, we secured £429,000 from Shared Prosperity Fund in support of community engagement for the foundation and feasibility work. And this year, so far, we have completed a master plan review looking at assessing and identifying the priority projects out of the 79 that were listed in the original master plan. And that looked at things like alignment with the Future Generations Act, funding potential, risk, complexity, community benefit. We've completed a landscape study to understand the potential of both the park and the wider landscape, because you have to remember that our ambitions go beyond the current park demise. I've recruited a team, so there's myself, we have a community development manager, a finance manager and a project coordinator. We've reached a responsibility agreement with the council. I think this one is important to reflect on, where the role is that you as a council protect and safeguard your assets, but we are taking on and we are keen to take on responsibility for the delivery of the project. That includes operating and also fundraising, and that's kind of why we're here. We've worked with the Regen team on the castle scaffolding project. I know you're talking about that later on. That will protect the castle from further deterioration, maintain the museum service, which is really at risk at the moment, because the castle needs to dry out before we can actually start working on it. We can't kind of snap into this immediately. There are timescales to go with this where we have to start early. We've developed a bid to be the anchor site of the new National Gallery of Contemporary Art for Wales, a major piece of work, 250-page document, which I think makes a really strong case. And in support of that, we also developed an outline business case. And that shows that if the anchor site came to Merthyr, there could be up to £283 million worth of benefit over the next 35 years to the local area. Alongside that, we produced a smaller report, which I believe many of you have seen, which is entitled Art at Cyfarthfa, that explains a wider remit for the role that art could play in the future of Cyfarthfa heritage area, not just the castle and the park. We've started an education programme, which is offering all primary year 4s in the council a day on the park, learning about the castle and the park, and we're supporting transport costs of that project. We've started bicentenary planning. Geraint and I sat in a very positive meeting just this week with the BBC, who are interested in commissioning TV, radio, live events in the park to celebrate the fact that in 2025 we'll be celebrating 200 years of the castle being built. A really major moment. And we've also secured pledges of £700,000 to support our work next. We really need to maintain the momentum that we have going at the moment if we're to take the project to the next level. In order to do this, we'll need to seek major funding and ensure Welsh Government in particular remain confident in and committed to this project. As you all know, there are many ties in terms of financial pressures at the moment, and we need them to remain aligned with the ambitions of the project. The biggest stumbling block we face, which could impact progress, is the lack of forward progress on this asset transfer and the lengths of lease being proposed. I will hand over to Roland, who will pick up the reins and can walk you through the asset transfer issue in a bit more detail. Thanks.
Right, okay, so I want to remind members that in April 2022, the Foundation proposed to the Council that there be two options, one for the Castle and Park, one for the furnaces and surrounding land, each for a term of 5 years, on the exercise of which the Council would grant the Foundation a lease of each area for a term of 250 years. The whole rationale for this proposal is funding, at the scale of which is currently in the range 75 to 150 million. And that's where the lease length is absolutely critical. We understand that the recommendation from your offices is that the Foundation should initially be granted leases with 99-year terms, but recognising that such leases would not be of sufficient length for any commercial funding, and that for each lease there would be a further option to extend the term to meet any commercial funding terms. Now, we've not seen that recommendation, but it's a proposal that concerns us in that it does not optimise the funding opportunities from the outset and potentially put such funding at risk. That risk is based on the terms that would attach to the exercise of the extension option. If the condition is simply that the Foundation needs a longer term to raise money, then the arrangement does nothing more than add another level of administrative burden and cost, both for the Council and the Foundation. It does not provide the Council with any transactional control. A 250-year lease from the outset achieves the same end at nil cost. However, if the Council is proposing to condition the extension option so that the Council has some control over the borrowing terms, there are problems for the Foundation. First, the terms available in the market may not be compatible with the Council's view of appropriate terms, which means that in practice, commercial borrowing may not be feasible. Secondly, any renegotiation resulting with the Council to change the terms to meet market requirements will be expensive and time-consuming for both of us. That also puts the commercial funding at risk because all commercial funding is time-critical. Offers from commercial lenders are not open-ended, but require drawdown within a stated time frame. It would be very rare for any offer to be open for sufficient time to cover a renegotiation of the option terms and the exercise of the option. Therefore, there's every risk that a commercial offer would be timed out. The Foundation takes the position that it should maximise the opportunity to fund this project from every possible source, and it views the current recommendation as a hindrance to that approach. We do not see that it brings any practical advantage to the Council, assuming the Council acknowledges that no sources of funding should be made unavailable to the Foundation. I'll hand back to Geraint.
Roland, many thanks for that. I mean, you've heard from Anna and Roland, and we don't put this approach, we don't put it forward lightly. I mean, it may be that some people in the chamber, will have some nervousness about this, but I think that what Roland has proposed is something, well-grounded in his own experience, and is something that will not actually put the Council at a disadvantage. That said, although I can understand the nervousness, I just wanted to do two things before I finish. First is to remind you that our proposal is coming from a board with enormous depth of experience. And I've mentioned to you the experience that Roland has brought to the table and that Jeff Hunt has brought to the table. But, you know, I feel really privileged to be chairing a board, leading a board that includes people like Roland as Jeff, as well as, for example, Sir Simon Jenkins, a former chair of the National Trust and a former deputy chair of English Heritage, not to mention a former editor of the Times. Ewan Jones, a senior architect with Grimshaws, the designers of the Eden Project. And Ewan spent 10 years on the board of the Design Commission for Wales. Anif Kara, founder of a world-leading firm of structural engineers and winner of 3 Stirling Prizes, and also professor of architectural technology at Harvard's Graduate School of Design. And then Robert Rummy, a leading landscape architect responsible for Bletchley Park, where the World Summit was held last week. And there are many others on that board. I think there is real depth of experience. I'm not going to list everybody. You know, we are currently 12 strong and are still recruiting another 2 or 3 to the board. But I just wanted to say that this is a body of people whose expertise I believe you can trust, as I believe can the Welsh Government, which brings me to my second and last point. The Council really does need to arm us as a foundation with the right conditions to fight Merthyr's Corner effectively with the Welsh Government and all other funders. And the foundation and the council, I think, have got to be on the same page on this. And that's why I'm hoping that you will agree to the approach that Roland has outlined. In a few weeks' time, the foundation and the council are going to be meeting the Welsh Government officials to discuss the way forward. I don't need to remind you, we've heard it already in this meeting tonight, that the funding climate is very difficult. The meeting with the Welsh Government is not going to be an easy one by any means. And my worry is that any weakness in our position could give hard-pressed officials in Welsh Government an excuse to put this scheme on the back burner. And I plead with you, please do not give the Welsh Government that excuse. Personally, you know, I am not a property lawyer. I rely on Roland's expert advice, but I cannot, for the life of me, see that the longer lease that we propose makes any material difference whatsoever to the council, whereas it could make a material difference to the foundation as we try to raise funds from all possible sources, public and commercial, in order to make this wonderful project happen. And we need that because we must maintain momentum. I mean, if I have a nightmare on this project, is that somewhere it actually stalls, and you know, we're treading water for a long time as costs continue to rise. We must actually maintain that momentum. I would just say to you that we have delivered, you know, as a foundation, we have delivered on everything that we have promised. The strength of the foundation's board that you've heard about and its staff leadership from Anna on my right, as well as our track record and staying power on what has been quite a difficult road. I think that strength is such that I believe we deserve your trust in our judgment on this matter. And so I hope that we do have it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the foundation? No, doesn't look like anyone's got any questions for you. So thank you very much for the presentation. And Councillor Geraint-Thomas is there.
Just a comment from me, Mr. Mayor, just to thank the board members and the Chief Executive of the Foundation for coming along this evening so passionately to plead for that extension on the lease. And I'm sure we'll have a real lively debate going forward. But I think from myself and Councillor Mitten, there's no nervousness from us. So we'll see how things go this evening. Thank you.
Councillor Darren Roberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation this evening, and I'd like to go on record of thanking Geraint and Roland for your time meeting with the Shadow Cabinet the other evening to go over what the proposals are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to move into an exempt session. So we need to move section 100. In order for the following to be considered in private, it's suggested that the public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 12, 13 under Part 4 of Schedule 12A, Section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972.
Before we go to that,
yes.
Just before we go into that, agenda item number 10, the Carmarthen Heritage Area Asset Transfer Report in particular has been a hot topic in my household between myself and Councillor Paula Layton over the last week since it's been published, and we were both in agreement that something of this magnitude shouldn't be an exempt item, and we're wondering why it is an exempt item.
Okay, someone answer that?
Do you want me to answer though?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because we, our opinion was that it was commercially sensitive.
Okay, Councillor Salmon.
At some stage tonight, Mr. Mayor, probably at the start of the debate of this agenda item, I'm going to make an amendment for this to go out to a full and thorough public consultation before a decision is made. And I believe Councillor Layton will second that amendment.
Okay, well, we'll deal with that when we get to
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So in the meantime, would someone like to move section 100?
I move section 100, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And Councillor Andrew Barry?
Yeah, can I second, Mr. Mayor?
Second. Okay, we'll take that to a vote.
No, they'll be on the normal screen. And Councillor Gibbs, can I ask you, are you voting for, against or abstaining, please?
Paul carries.
Thank you. Councillor David Jones, Councillor Brent Carter, please. Councillor Julia Jenkins. So that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So as recording stops, Democratic Services?